I had a question at the beginning, and it's half answered through the meditation, but I wondered if you would share what you feel the pain of a broken heart is.
It's very painful. Look, I've been through it, Lisa. I've had the pain of a broken heart. While I was going through it, it was a constant reminder to me that I need to grow. I need, to evolve inside myself to a much higher place, than to allow that kind of experience to literally consume me. Mean, I remember it once for months it went on. And that's what I learned from that. I learned that from everything, I discovered years ago that, whatever I experience in life is my teacher. And if things drag me down, it's just telling me that I haven't developed enough inner strength or consciousness to stay above them, to be able to use them in order to attain a positive level in my life. I just wrote I suggest you all go and read this. I just wrote a blog that was posted yesterday and starts out with, one of the great tragedy of my life that I remember to this day was when I was 16 years old. And my heart was broken. It wasn't from a romance or a relationship, it was from my father having passed on. But what I wrote about was how somehow I learned how to use the experience in order to completely change my life. I suggest you go read that. There's also a picture there that's very sweet of myself, my father, my sister when I was 11 years old and she was like 8 years old. And it's a very sweet and wonderful, I think one of the best things I've written in terms of blogs and that type of thing. But it's about what you're asking, how my heart was broken. And yet, I experienced something that was so profound going through that situation that it completely transformed my life. And then the rest of the blog is about another experience like that, which also transformed my life. So, I don't ever suggest wallowing in, the angst that comes with tragedy, that comes with having your heart broken, with grief, with all that stuff. You know, open and see what it will guide you to, how you will grow because of it, what you have learned going through the situation. And this is not just unique to me. Everybody goes through this kind of stuff. Parents die, this one, relationships break up, all this kind of stuff is just part of living. But what I've learned from it is, what will this take me to? And do you listen to what God sends you? When my father died, he was in a coma for 3 weeks. He didn't know myself, my mother, or my sister. He had 106-degree fever. And just before he died, I went into his hospital room and he was lying in bed. And in my life, I never saw anything like it. He was in such a state of serenity and inner peace that today I would say it was like a state of samadhi, a state of, oneness with God. He had let go of everything. And I was 16 years old. And what do I understand about it? So I step out into the hallway, the corridor of the hospital, and I meet his nurse. And I said to her, what happened there? And she told me something, that woman who I wouldn't even recognize today if I saw her, if she's even alive today, told me something that completely changed my life. And I was smart enough to listen. And she said to me, to her experience, just before people die, they go through all the suffering but you know, they attain a state of serenity. It's like they have this. It's like they have let go of everything, and they enter this state of. It's almost like samadhi. It's like a state of nirvana. And I thought, why did my father have to wait 49 years? I never saw him that much at peace in all the years I knew him. You know, to attain this 15 minutes before he died. Now, this was a great tragedy for me. It broke my heart. I was very close to my father. But then, out of that experience, there was the voice of God teaching me. And I made a decision when I was 16 that I will find somebody on this planet. I don't know where he is or she is. I will find that person who will teach me how to attain a state of inner peace while I'm living here. How to transform all of the suffering, the angst, into a spiritual life. It changed my life. That nurse and my father was my first great teacher, the last 15 minutes of his life. And that nurse, God bless her, all of it was sent to me by God to teach me what I had to do with my life. So, I'm just telling, I mean, I wrote about this, and then there's a whole other section to this, which I won't go into now. But I would suggest going there, reading that. It's really profound and very touching, But what I'm saying is we are constantly being given clues about what we have to do in life. We rarely ever listen to them. We rarely ever, have that comprehension in ourselves that this is in a way for God to talk to us about how we have to change in our lives and what our purpose of living is all about. And I think it's very profound, and one has to finally wake up and begin to listen to life. Life is the voice of God teaching us. I mean, I hate to say this, but there's nothing wrong with having your heart broken every so often. It's just a reminder. And instead of being angry if you break up in a relationship, I spent certain
Yeah.
amount. Hello? Hello? I spent a certain amount of time with that person, and I learned something from them. One has to be grateful. It's also the only way you get free of these situations that are very dramatic and that happen to almost everybody.
Thank you.
You're welcome, dear. Does anyone else have a question they would like to ask?
Stuart Sneovy. I guess that would also answer kind of my question about dealing with illness, and how to go through
Dealing with what?
illness.
Yeah.
Going through with it, living with it. Or
Look, I mean, uh, I mean, look, all right. Look, to me, the only real healing in life, is opening your heart, finding love inside, finding joy in your heart. That's the real healing. I remember, I wrote that book, Leah, a long time ago. I don't know if you ever read that book, but it's, a story of meditation and healing. And it was from an actual experience I had. I wrote it as fiction, but it came from almost everything in the book was exactly the way it happened. I changed the names and the places because I had to protect myself in a way. But it was all, and ultimately my realization in going through that experience with this young girl who was told by the doctors she had 3 weeks to live. And the one thing I learned from all of that is that the real healing is love. The real healing is learning how to transform that illness into joy, into love, to a connection with God. I've had hundreds of people come to me. Somebody's coming now. I've had hundreds of people come to me. It used to be like a bakery, and you took a number and they would, line up and come for healing sessions. And and one of the things I realized, everybody wanted 5 more years, 10 more years of life. Very few people understood that their illness was a way of connecting with God. Their illness was a way of transcending their inner condition and connecting their consciousness with a higher energy in the universe. And what brought that young girl through it was this development of a consciousness in herself that connected her to spirit. And the terrible thing about it was that, after the drama was over, and literally, she had a cancer, a 13-year-old girl with a cancer the size of a grapefruit inside her. And the first question I asked her, and I love this kid, she was like, she was very close to me, and her mother I knew very well, and and the first question I asked her was, "Do you want to live?" And she said yes. So we began the healing process, and I'll never forget the doctors who didn't want to do anything. 3 months later, they came and they said, "We can operate on her now. The tumor has shrunk enough inside her that we can operate on her now. And we can probably," and the doctor came out of the operating room dancing. He said he had never seen anything like it in his life, ever. They took this tumor out of her. It was the size of, and she said the tumor had formed a crust around itself and was shrinking inside her. It was extraordinary. So what I'm saying is what made this happen wasn't me. I don't take credit for that. It was just opening and letting the energy of God's spirit flow through, and allowing that love, that consciousness to truly affect the human being. And I think anyone that goes through illness, you can't sit around and, beat yourself up. You have to find that love inside. That's what heals. And if anyone dies, like my father dies with that serenity, even if it's 15 minutes before they leave, their life had attained something. And we all have to ultimately accept the fact we're born, we live, something takes us from the world. Now, it's much better to allow that force to take us with an open heart, with love, with joy, with, embracing God, being a happy person while we live on the earth. Look, I was, about 3 years ago, I had an operation, and it was a very serious operation that they had to do. And I had all these doctors around me. And it was absolutely on the day that my teacher, Rudy, took his samadhi. It was on February 21st that they did this operation. And I'm lying on this, bed there. And I told the doctor, I say, look, this is the most sacred day of the year for me. Do your job. I will go into this with my heart open, trusting every single one of you. This is a very sacred day. Do your job. Anyway, they did their job. Obviously, I'm sitting here doing this today, and God bless them. But I remember one doctor came to me while I was recuperating in the hospital, and I said to him, the food here is terrible. It's terrible. How can I eat it? He went out, he got me a cup of tea and this and that, and brought me a whole assortment of food. The doctor did that. I've never heard of a doctor ever doing anything like that. He went out and got me all this food to eat, and I started to laugh and I thanked him, and the two of us laughed a lot. So what I'm saying is we have to go into these things open and not have the sense that, nobody lives here forever. The soul of a human being lives forever. And if we connect with that soul and we find joy in our heart, the chakra system is developed, we attain a state of enlightenment, a oneness with the universe. And we don't, go around, killing ourselves because the body has to leave, or, there's always this realization, if we haven't learned in this lifetime what we're supposed to learn, there's the next one. We come back, take everything, that we've learned in this lifetime, and we bring it into the next lifetime. In this process of evolution and spiritual growth that ultimately brings a person to a state of enlightenment. And I've always said it, the answer is so simple. Happy people are enlightened people. Just having a state of joy and love and happiness in ourselves. And we've learned what we're here on the earth to learn, how to transform suffering and difficulty into joy and love. Does anyone else have a question they would like to ask? Okay. If there are no more questions, again, I say this all the time. I'm sure you're all sick of it, but I will just, in all humility, God bless you all for being here, for being my teacher. Your presence is making me work really deep on myself, and I have nothing but gratitude to each and every one of you. So God bless you all, and thank you. And there'll be a class on Tuesday, and I'm looking forward to seeing everybody. Bless you all.
Thank you, Stuart.
You're
See you all.